Puranitai Jaya Maya Pushashi Iskan Guru Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Shri Puranitai Maya Pushashi Ki Jai Namo Vishnu Jai Krishna Vishnu Shrimati Shri Ram Swami. Abhai's home at 151 Harrison Road was in the Indian section of North Calcutta. Abhai's father, Gaura Mohan Dey, belonged to the aristocratic Suvarna Manik merchant community. He was related to the wealthy Mullik family, which for hundreds of years had traded in gold and salt with the British. Originally, the Mulliks had been members of the Dey family, a Gotra lineage that traces back to the ancient sage Gautama. But during the Mughal period of pre-British India, a Muslim ruler had conferred the title Mullik, Lord, on a wealthy, influential branch of the Deys. Then, several generations later, a daughter of the Deys had married into the Mullik family, and the two families had remained close ever since. An entire block of properties on either side of Harrison Road belonged to Lokanath Mullik, and Gaur Mohan and his family lived in a few rooms of a 3-story building within the Mullik properties. Across the street from the Deys' residence was the Radha Govinda temple. Shishi Karanitai Maya Pashashi Ki Jai. Where for the past 500 years the Mulliks had maintained worship of the deity of Radha and Krishna. Various shops on the Mullik properties provided income for the deity and for the priests conducting the worship. Every morning before breakfast, the Mullik family members would visit the temple to see the deity of Radha Govinda. They would offer cooked rice, kachoris and vegetables on a large platter, and would then distribute the prasadam to the deity's morning visitors from the neighborhood. Among the daily visitors was Abhay Charan, accompanying his mother, father, or servant. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the 5th canto. The title is entitled The History of the Life of Ajamil, Chapter 1. And it's text 21. Kanya Kubje Dvija Kaschid. Kanya Kubje Dvija Kaschid. Dasi Patir Ajamila. Dasi Patir Ajamila. Namna Nasta Sadacharo. Namna Nasta Sadacharo. Dasya Samsaga Dushita. Dasya Samsaga Dushita. Kanya Kubje Duja Kaschid. Dasipati Ajamila. Namna Nasta Sadacharo. Dasya Samsaga Dushita. Kanya Kubje Duja Kaschid. Dasipati Ajamila. Namna Nasta Sadacharo. Dasya Samsaga Dushita. Kanya Kubje Duja Kaschid. Dasipati Ajamila. Nasta Sadacharo. Dasya Samsaga Dushita. Kanya Kubje Duja Kaschid. Dasipati Ajamila. Namna Nasta Sadacharo. Dushita. Kanya Kubje Duja Kaschid. Dasipati Ajamila. Namna Nasta Sadacharo. Dashasam Sagatushita Kanyakubje. In the city of Kanyakubja, Kanuj, a town near Kanpur. Dvija Brahmana Kaschit. Oh, try that again. Dvija Brahman Kaschit, some. Dasipati, the husband of a low-class woman or prostitute. Ajamila, Ajamil. Namna, by name. Nashtasat Achara, who lost all Brahminical qualities. Dasha, of the prostitute or maidservant. Samsarga Dushita, contaminated by the association. Translation. In the city known as Kanyakubja, there was a Brahmin named Ajamil who married a prostitute maidservant and lost all his Brahminical qualities because of the association of that low-class woman. So, responsibly please. In the city known as Kanyakubja, there was a Brahmin named Ajamil who married a prostitute maidservant and lost all his Brahminical qualities because of the association of that low-class woman. The fault of illicit connection with women is that it makes one lose all Brahminical qualities. In India, there is still a class of servants called Shudras, whose maidservants' wives are called Shudranis. Sometimes people who are very lusty establish relationships with such maidservants and sweeping women, since in the higher status of society they cannot indulge in the habit of woman hunting, which is strictly prohibited by social convention. Ajamil, a qualified Brahmin youth, lost all his Brahminical qualities because of his association with a prostitute, but he was ultimately saved because he had begun the process of bhakti yoga. Therefore, in the previous verse, Shukadeva Goswami spoke of the person who has only once surrendered himself at the lotus feet of the Lord, Mana Krishna Padaravindayo, or has just begun the bhakti yoga process. Bhakti yoga begins with Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, hearing and chanting of Lord Vishnu's names, as in the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chanting is the beginning of Bhakti Yoga. Therefore, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declares, Harinama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva Katya Anyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. The process of chanting the holy name of the Lord is always superbly effective, but it is especially effective in this age of Kali. Its practical effectiveness will now be explained by Shukadeva Goswami through the history of Ajamil, who was freed from the hands of the Yamadutas simply because of chanting the holy name of Narayan. Parikshit Maharaj's original question was how to be freed from falling down into hell or into the hands of the Yamadutas. In reply, Shukadeva Goswami is citing this old historical example to convince Parikshit Maharaj of the potency of Bhakti Yoga, which begins simply with the chanting of the Lord's name. All the great authorities of Bhakti Yoga recommend the devotional process beginning with the chanting of the holy name of Krishna, Tannama Grihanadibe. Tannama Rupacharitadi Sukirtananu Smitcho Kramena Vanasama Nasini Yoja Tishtan Braje Tad Anuragajanana Gami Kalam Malik Akira Upadeshi Sharam. Sharam is the essence. Ita Upadeshi Sharam, the essence of all advice is that one should chant and remember the Lord's name, quality, forms, and pastimes. Om Jnanatamana Shagananjana Shalakaya Chakshramilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Shri Chaitanya Manobhashtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swavadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Srivas Adi Gaura Bhaktarinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So at one time we had a book called The Second Chance, and a nice book to pass out. Kind of this section in the Bhagavatam encapsulates the whole essence really of the Hare Krishna movement, our Siddhanta and our Sadhacca, the qualities that we're trying to aspire for. So it came up yesterday in our Japa Sangha that the goal of chanting Hare Krishna is not to chant 16 rounds. Srila Prabhupada conceded on 16 rounds, but he conceded on 16 rounds, but with the proviso that was the minimal and that you should chant unlimited rounds off the beads. So we do the bare minimum, which is 16, and then throughout the day we have 16 hours. If we sleep for 6 and chant for 2, then we're left with 16 hours. And in those 16 hours you can eat and do a bit of gossip, do a few sprouts, and hopefully chant a few more holy names. So we figured we could probably chant an extra 60 rounds off the beads just throughout the day, if you had a clicker with you, you know. You can maybe devise some ingenious way of attaching the clicker to your body and pressing it with some appendage whilst being engaged in other activities. And because they're extra rounds, then it's no problem if you're doing something else at the same time, because it's still more than nothing, you see. Anything is better than nothing. Extra is always better than less. So then we could be doing 76 rounds a day. And then the advancement would be a lot faster and the obstacles would be a lot smaller to come up against. So it's no hidden secret, although I think there is a danger that we can miss the point, we can miss the importance of chanting. And we can chant improperly and think that we are chanting. You could chant for years and years and years, and then one day you suddenly realize you're not chanting properly. So it'd be better to just chant properly to start with and save yourself a lot of time. Yeah. And chanting properly. Well, the first part of chanting properly is chanting constantly. So if you're not chanting constantly, then you're not going to, your chances of chanting properly. See, if you're chanting properly, then you will find it hard to stop chanting. And what stops us from chanting? One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and you should be ready to offer all respect to others, confirmed by the gong. So if we're not chanting constantly, it's because we don't feel that we're lower than the straw on the street. Because if you're lower than the straw on the street and you're feeling so helpless and so dependent, then why would you put your guard down? You know, it's like being in a boxing ring, and for the first 2 hours of the boxing fight, you've got your gloves up and you're punching away, and then after 2 hours, your gloves go down, and the other guy comes over to you and he's punching you and knocking you all around the ring, and you say, "Oh no!" After 2 hours, I always put my gloves down, and that's it. After that, you would keep your guard up all the time. Otherwise, you can expect to get hit by the material energy. But what makes us put our guard down is because we're proud and we don't think we need to. We think we're okay. I think we can check out Maya and we're fine. We don't have to worry about things. And I've got things under control. It's not a problem. And that's why Sankirtan is really good, actually, because on Sankirtan, you develop this habit of chanting all the time. And if you're not, then you can get affected very heavily by the atmosphere and the environment. Sankirtan's good training. Anyway, whether you do Sankirtan or you don't, or whether you spend your entire life chopping sprouts, still hearing about the holy name or hearing the holy name. Before you hear the holy name, you have to hear about the holy name. That's why Prabhupada's giving you these beautiful purports. So by the time we've heard about the holy name, we're really keen to hear the holy name, to chant the holy name. And we get a lot of chances to try and get it right. It's like I go down once a week and do a bit of archery, and don't hit the bullseye as often as I should. But every now and again I do hit the bullseye. But I have to shoot about 60 arrows to hit the bullseye a couple of times. So chanting's like that as well. To hit the bullseye, you have to chant a lot. You got more chance of, if I went down there and I was shooting arrows constantly all day, then I'm going to hit a lot more bullseyes, But I could say, well, look, I'm really, really bad at this. So maybe the less I do it, then the less I miss hitting the bullseye. There is a philosophy like that. Instead of chanting 16, just chant 4 rounds. And because you only chant 4 rounds, you'll make less offenses. Because if you're only firing 4 arrows, your chances of hitting the bullseye are a lot less than if you're firing arrows constantly throughout the day. And when you hit the bullseye, you don't want to stop. That's when you really enjoy being down there. So how long is it going to take us before we start hitting the bullseye? And when you get really good at archery, then after like 4 or 5 arrows, you have to stop and go over and pull them out, because otherwise one arrow will back into another one and it'll get destroyed because all the arrows are getting really, really close, So as we continue chanting and we become more expert, then in the end, every mantra, every holy name is hitting the bullseye. Chanting in a humble state of mind, more tolerant. This word tolerant, denya, it also means forgiving. So someone who's tolerant is someone who's able to forgive very easily. So the two are synonymous, actually, the quality of tolerance and the quality of forgiveness. If you're holding on to resentment and grudges, it goes very ill with the mood of kindness that a devotee is trying to cultivate. It's the first quality, actually, the 26 qualities of a devotee, kindness is the first quality. So we reflect our level of Krishna consciousness in our ability to be kind to ourselves and kind to others. And the way that we're kind to ourselves is we give ourselves the holy name constantly. That's giving ourselves a break, that's like real self-compassion. Just keep chanting and hearing the holy names. Any questions or comments?
I'm wondering about, and this first one is just has to come. That should be more
humble than the blade of grass. Yeah.
I'm wondering if this isn't. So when we come to this understanding that this is how we should be about chanting, it might seem a bit foreign to us. So how much can we try to cultivate that, and will it also come naturally the further we progress in consciousness?
So question is, do we just get on with our Krishna consciousness and allow the qualities to develop naturally, or do we make an extraneous endeavor outside of practicing our Krishna consciousness to become humble and develop all the different qualities that we're supposed to? So in the Madhurya Kandamini by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it explains there's 2 leaves, Subhada, which is the unfurling of the leaf of good qualities. Anyone know the other one? There's another quality, there's another leaf, and as it unfurls, it's the disappearance of bad qualities. So sometimes one leaf unfurls quicker than the other. So one devotee may be practicing Krishna consciousness and he's developing amazing good qualities. He's becoming so enthusiastic. He does more sprouts than anybody else with his eyes closed. But he's still really rude. He keeps pushing people out the prasadam queue and being sarcastic and lazy. And on the one hand, he seems to be really going forward, and on the other hand, he doesn't seem to be going anywhere at all. Or he may have no real enthusiasm for going to Mangalarti or doing anything really. in devotional service, but he's becoming less dirty than he was, and he's not as smelly anymore, and he's much more friendly now, much nicer to be with. So his bad qualities are disappearing, and his good ones haven't come yet. So it's a dynamic process, and it's beyond our ability to control. It's actually by Krishna's kindness and mercy that these transformations take place. And sometimes if we try to interfere consciously ourselves with it, it can actually distract us from the process, because the process of Krishna consciousness is focusing on Krishna and taking the focus off ourselves. So we want to be Krishna conscious, not my false ego conscious. I'm painfully aware of all my different foibles and idiosyncrasies, and then we can become distracted, you see, and become self-absorbed. So, and humility is not born of spending 3 hours looking at yourself in the mirror and thinking how grotesque you are. Humility is becoming aware of the reality of how insignificant you are in relation to Krishna. It's like Krishna is overwhelmingly. When Arjuna saw Krishna's universal form, he was overwhelmed. He actually said, "Can you take that form away now? Because it's just I can't cope with it. It's just so overwhelmingly, unlimitedly, all-devouringly powerful that I'm so afraid, and I'm losing my footing. I'm becoming so disorientated." So then Krishna says, "Okay, let all the disturbances go away, and let's just have a loving relationship again." So it's naturally there. That humility is naturally there when you become aware of the potency and the presence of Krishna, and naturally that diminishes our own false pride. So these impurities may be there, but if we focus on the cleansing process, we just keep cleansing and cleansing and cleansing, and don't become distracted, because if you do, then there's a chance that your enthusiasm will slacken, and we don't want that. We want to stay very positive, very intense, Tivrena. Now, Dhruva Maharaj, he was Tivrena. He was intensely practicing his Om Namo Narayana, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. He was intensely doing that. And somebody could have come along and said, "You're so bogus, you just want a kingdom better than your fathers, That's so materialistic." But by his intensity, he won the favor of Lord Vishnu. So we don't have to be preoccupied with our disqualification. We have to be focused more on our application and intensity. And if we're like gung-ho, we're full on, we're chopping those sprouts like our life depends on it, and we're doing it with as much love as we can muster, then that intensity will attract Lord Vishnu and Krishna. So that's what we should. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said, "If I could just raise one of my disciples to the mode of passion, I would consider my mission successful." So sometimes when devotees in the mode of ignorance, they're thinking, "I think I'll just bypass the mode of passion because it looks like a lot of effort, and we'll just slip into the mode of goodness." So they get their bead bag out and they go, "Hare Krishna." And the guy next to him is going, "Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna." And he's thinking, "That guy's so passionate. Why doesn't he just get in the mode of goodness like me?" But he's actually in the mode of ignorance. So don't shy away from applying yourself to the Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Dashyam, Atmanivedanam. All these 9 limbs, especially the chanting, is the essential ingredient in Kali Yuga. If you chant with full intensity, then everything will become a lot easier to deal with, and your qualities will naturally start to unveil themselves of their own accord.
I have to say that when we say this verse, when we recite this verse, it's only kind of to remind us and sometimes to see that is what is coming.
Do you know what being shuddered is? You ever been shuddered? Shuddered, yeah. Comes up in non-violent communication. Prabhu, you should have done that. You should have done that. You should have done that. So when you get shuddered, it's like you're being pushed. And the natural kind of knee-jerk response, the default of a material conditioned person is when you get told you should do this, then people naturally say, oh, well, I won't. They reckon that's what's behind the cigarette campaign that says you shouldn't smoke these cigarettes. It's a government warning. And that makes people want to smoke them then, so they don't lose sales. But it looks like they're doing the right thing, you know. You shouldn't do this. So and Mahaprabhu was saying they looked in Srila Prabhupada's books on Veda-based, and it's something like 6,000 odd times that the word should is used. So we've got a lot of shoulds, a lot of things that we should be doing in Krishna consciousness. But if we can just remember that should means the goal, it doesn't mean you have to be there immediately. You should chant in a humble state of mind, but you may not be chanting in a humble state of mind. And so you accept, yeah, I know I should be. I should be a pure devotee. I know that. And I accept that fully, but I'm not. So therefore I have to proceed with as much enthusiasm and positivity as possible. Yeah, because otherwise if you get shuddered, the tendency is to shudder.
In terms of performing activities of social service, like pushing you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because that's you feel more inadequate if you're doing something you're not very good at compared to doing the same thing you're always good at. Should we go looking for these things? Or should we just leave that up to the process?
Okay. If I understood the question correctly, back to that Peter is asking, should we force ourselves consciously out of our comfort zone and put ourselves into a situation which is very uncomfortable, and this will help us to surrender more and speed up the process of spiritual advancement? Or is it better to stay comfortable and practice Krishna consciousness and gradually build up to the point where you can do these things? Is that correct? Yeah. So if you can't sustain, then it becomes unfavorable. If you can practice to a level which is sustainable. Also, if you practice below the level that you're capable of doing, Krishna is well aware of what you are capable of doing and what you're not capable of doing. It's like one of the things I like doing when I go swimming, what I especially like to do is to dive in and then stay underwater and see how far I can get by holding my breath, you know. And I found that I can actually do a length in these local swimming baths, which I was surprised that I could do, but I wouldn't have known unless I'd have jumped in. So with Krishna consciousness, the brahmachari ashram, we could jump in there and we could take a strong commitment to do it. And we don't know, we may last an entire length. We may go up and down 3 lengths and end up taking sannyas after being a brahmachari for 10 years. Well, you won't know until you try. If you just sit at the side and you're like doing experiments on your breathing, okay, I was able to keep it in for 90 seconds. And how long does it take to swim down? You know, and you're trying to figure it all out in your mind. You won't really know. You'll have to just dive in and then just see how you perform under duress. Do you excel, or does it become too much for you? And then you have the association of the devotees as a safety net, so that you can try something. And Srila Prabhupada was he would push his disciples, and they would do things beyond what they thought they were capable of doing. And if it had been left just to their estimation of what they thought they were able to do, then so many things wouldn't have happened in the history of ISKCON. If you look, you'll see there's just so many instances of devotees excelling beyond what anybody thought that they were capable of. Even Srila Prabhupada thought they were capable of. Srila Prabhupada, when he came over, he didn't think they'd be able to follow the 4 regular principles. He was just hoping that they would chant, and he was surprised to see actually how much the devotees flourished and how strong and powerful the movement became in such a short period of time, So good association, open-hearted relationships with devotees who are steady in the practice of Krishna consciousness, and then throwing ourselves in at the deep end and then seeing how we perform, seeing if we can do it, Then if we can't, then we just come up. We get a breath of air, we go over to the side, and we know that that's our limitation. At least right now it is. But maybe I can train, to get to that point. I remember when I told my friends, because I when I was 18, I was an atheistic punk rocker. And when I was 19, I was a punk rocker that had gone vegetarian and started believing in God. And I told all my friends that I was celibate now, and they just couldn't believe, I was like the last person on the planet. And they were thinking, well, he'll probably go out of that phase and he'll be back with us again in the pub in a couple of weeks, And so that's what they thought. And so it was a big surprise to everyone, including myself, especially my parents. Tony, what are you doing with a baldy head? My dad sat me down. He said, Tony, how can you believe in a God called Harry? So the whole thing was like totally, it was just a different field completely. They just, nobody, it was unquantifiable. Nobody knew what was going on. And then there was a rapid transformation in a very short period of time. And I didn't really notice how much of a transformation until I went back to see my friends. And they were like, talking to me as if I was my the normal Tony that they know. And but Tony had changed, become somebody else. So, false ego means false assessment of your capabilities. False ego doesn't just mean walking around like Elvis Presley with your collar up, trying to look cool. It also means, and generally an underestimation of your capability. Generally, a false ego. That's what it is. It's a restriction, a restraint on what the soul is actually capable of doing. And sometimes it's like that. You're on Sankirtan and you're doing things and you're thinking, I would never have dreamt that I could do this. You can do amazing things. Yes, Pep, Prabhu.
If you have any advice for when we're about to do the service that is jumping in the deep end, how can we say like?
There's so many sprouts that you can't get out of that. If it's not sustainable, then you lose your enthusiasm to do it. That's what happened to Arjuna. His bow slipped from his hand, and he'd lost all his energy, all his empowerment had completely drained from him. Now Krishna could have said, "Well, that's okay, Arjuna. Maybe you can just come once a month to the battlefield for half an hour if you like, and you just chill out. Go and watch a video on Krishna's pastimes, and chant a few extra rounds." He could have said that, couldn't he? Or why don't you nip around to Holland and Barrett's and get yourself a marzipan, and you'll be okay, But Krishna didn't. Krishna just started preaching to him right away, Come on, how these impurities come upon you. You're better than this. You can do this, So he encouraged Arjuna to go beyond what he felt he was capable of doing, And he wasn't actually, the thing is, he wasn't actually capable of doing it. It was only because Drona put down his arms that they could kill him. Otherwise, they would have never been able to kill him. And it was only because Bhishma wouldn't defend himself against Shakuni. Was it Shakuni? No, Shakuni was with the dice, wasn't he? Who was the one who used to be a woman in his he was Amba, wasn't he? Amba came back as this person, so he wouldn't raise a weapon. So it was only because Krishna intervened that he was. So Arjuna was quite right saying, this is actually impossible to do. It was a fair estimation, apart from the fact that he hadn't factored in what would Krishna do? How would Krishna intervene? Karna as well. Karna was his elder brother, and he was he was as good an archer as Arjuna. Very, very. And it was only because he was tricked out of his. He gave his armor away to Indra, and because Indra was the father of Arjuna, he tricked because he knew that Arjuna would never stand a chance against Karna. And even when Arjuna did kill Karna, it wasn't fair in one sense because he was trying to pull the wheel up. And then Krishna says, never mind about being righteous. He wasn't righteous when they derobed Draupadi. He wasn't righteous when they cheated you with the gambling match. So forget righteousness. He doesn't deserve a righteous death. Just kill him, So many examples of how by Krishna's intervention we can do the impossible. So you have to factor that one in as well, not just, well, I don't think I can do it, There's so many sprouts. But Krishna could empower you, could give you a sword to do the sprouts with so you do them faster. The Krishna factor. Yes, Raghunath Bhatt.
Marathon is a good example of when you can put everything to the side and experience what it means to go beyond your limits.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's not so easy to carry on and remain on the marathon after the marathon.
Yeah.
And actually, I was listening to this lecture about spiritual bypassing by Mahatma Guru. So he's saying, that you cannot win in the long term by losing in some other field.
Yeah.
You can put something aside, and this is really powerful surrendering for the festival or for the marathon, and just really go for it and neglect some other aspect of your life.
Yeah.
But in a long run, if you lose somewhere else and you try to win somewhere else, that the place where you're losing is going to catch you somewhere along the line. So that you neglect sadhana in order to distribute more books. You will do more books for a while, but in the long term.
Yeah, that's it. It has to be what's favorable and sustainable, you see. This is the important part. Can you sustain? If you can sustain steady endeavor over a prolonged period of time, then it means you're practicing devotional service in the mode of goodness. If you're doing it in the mode of passion, then you can do some amazing things for a certain period of time, but you can't sustain it. And then mode of passion breaks down into the mode of ignorance. Oh, I can't be bothered with this. This is just the way. I'll forget it. And you throw the towel in, and then you just give up. In the mode of passion, if you fail, then you give up. In the mode of goodness, if you fail, you learn. So that's the difference. And we will fail in so many ways because we're not. Even we may be perfect. It may seem like we failed. So many examples of Krishna's devotees seemingly failing. But they don't give up. They say a failure is not somebody that fails. A failure is just somebody that gives up. If you don't give up, then you're never a failure. You will be successful in due course. So how can you maintain a steady and constant endeavor, And the first symptom of a Majjhima Adhikari is his ability to chant 16 rounds steadily every single day. So the longer you're able to do that, the more you're becoming a Majjhima Adhikari. That's like the foundational quality for developing steadiness, because if that's there every day, then wherever the problem is there, it will diminish, and in due course you'll overcome it, So we do have marathons at times, and we may cut back on doing other things, but only for a short period of time. And Srila Prabhupada advised all his disciples to go to the Holy Dham. And what you may experience, and I'm sure what Raghunath and others experience, is when you go to the Holy Dham, you feel like you're getting the rewards for all the austerities you've been performing in the West. So you earn those blessings, those merits. But you have to go there and go and cash in your dividends at a certain time, every few years at least, and go over, and then you get so much mercy, and then you're able to come back rejuvenated and replenished, and you can continue on, So it's arranged like that so that we can sustain. And then you can ask devotees that have been in ISKCON their entire lives and ask them, how have you managed to do that? And they're writing books now, explaining to us how they're doing it. To charter it out map it out very clearly for us, so that we can see, you know, how to avoid the pitfalls, how to avoid becoming lazy. Srila Prabhupada said, don't stay back at the temple and be fatty. We don't want to be fatties. So there's a balance of so many different things. But if we're in the association of devotees who are more experienced and are quite steady in their practices, and that's an invaluable resource for helping us, you know. And they can say, Prabhu, okay, chill out now. The marathon ended 2 months ago. Go and do some extra reading, go and do some chanting, you know. Any other questions or comments?
You see, going back to the Shastra conversion, we've been free from false prestige. Should we there's not much external prestige initially, so any good in that, or is it just the internal thing?
As far as I know, the question is, in the Shikshashtakam verse, Lord Chaitanya is advising that we become devoid of all sense of false prestige. And so Pada is asking, should we therefore be careful that we're not acquiring prestige and be proactively avoiding any sense of prestige that may accumulate? Is that right? Yeah. Because we could become proud of being the best sprout chopper in Les Mahego, for instance. And well, I think that's like similar to the other question that you asked, isn't it? Do we extraneously endeavor for being humble, or do we just allow the humility to naturally develop in our practice of Krishna consciousness? So I think because they're all related, whether you're being humble or you're being devoid of a sense of false prestige. I mean, to be realized, it just means to be real. That's all realized means. Doesn't mean anything cosmic, really. It just means to become real. To be a realized person means that you're real, you know, you're genuine. Sincere means free of wax, free from wax. So sincere, the soul is sincere, and the false ego is insincere. The false ego's got all the cracks in it, you see. So rather than trying to bolster up the false ego and justify all the cracks in the false ego, we just remove the whole layer of false ego. And the soul is sincere. It's 100% pure consciousness. All the soul wants to do is serve and love Krishna. That's what the soul wants to do. False prestige is identifying with the coverings, all the different cracked and faulty identifications which have got nothing to do with the soul. So whether you're trying to be devoid of false prestige, or you're trying to be humble, or you're trying to be enthusiastic, or you're trying to be kind, you don't have to bother trying to create those qualities. You inherently have those qualities as the soul. You know, there was like one devotee, they caught him, he was in the room and he was going like this with his arms. He was like that. And they said, Prabhu, what are you doing? He goes, I've just found out from a Siddha Baba in Vrindavan that I'm a peacock in the spiritual world. So I'm just getting in the mood, you know. So whatever you are will become revealed. You don't have to like extraneously endeavor to practice that. Whatever it is that you are will become apparent in due course of time, you know. So we don't have to worry about. We just want to be sincere. Sincere means we just want to come from the soul. We just want to be real. We just want to be genuine. That's what sincere is, you know. From the soul, that's real. Then you can say we're realized, we're self-realized, as opposed to false ego realized. We've realized how cool we are. We've realized how much better we are than anybody else at doing this. We've realized how stupid everybody else is. We've realized how unqualified everyone else is and how worthy I am. That's all false. That's all insincere.
How can we remain kind to ourselves the more that we notice the impurities?
How can we remain kind to ourselves when we see our impurities? So, well, when you see that you are unworthy and you are unqualified, then you can spiritually bypass that and just, you could see a very beautiful woman walk down the road, and then you realize you're really attracted to her. So you say, she is a total witch. She's illusion personified. She's really, really, and you bring up all this vehemence towards the women. And what you're doing is you're trying to bypass the fact that you're so attached to them, and that it's not their fault, it's your fault because of the way you're looking at them. So if we see some quality in ourselves and we're disgusted by that, and we try to bypass it artificially and try and compensate for it by being, negative toward it and hateful toward it, it doesn't go away. You don't get free from attachment to the opposite sex by hating them or hating yourself or beating yourself up. That's not how you do it. You learn to respect them as mother, and you learn these positive qualities. So if you see that you have some impurity and it's something that you don't like, you accept her. It's there. You don't deny it or punish yourself for it. Like they had these. There was these spiritual practitioners that used to flagellate themselves. I think it was with a cat of 9 tails. But they'd give themselves a good doing, If they saw themselves doing something really bad, then they'd go off and lock themselves in the room and have a good, do 64 rounds of whacking yourself on the back, And then they come out thinking, I'll be okay now, But you don't get free of your impurities by hating yourself. You get free of your impurities by loving Krishna. And as you develop your love for Krishna, you realize how much Krishna loves you, because he initiated the relationship in the first place. That's the thing, you see, we'd forgotten Krishna completely. And he made a whole arrangement to bring us back to him. So the more we can reflect on that and think, wow, Krishna thinks I'm worthwhile, he's got my back. He's never forgotten me, though I've forgotten him. And he's made so many arrangements. He's sent Srila Prabhupada across, give me all these books, give me all these sprouts, just give me all this service to do. Krishna is so kind, He must love me so much. And we think, oh, I must be worthwhile then, I must actually be quite a nice person underneath it all. And they say that the root of all psychological problems is this inability to express and receive love. That underpins every psychological problem. Actually, it all comes down. If you can establish a loving relationship with Krishna, then you love everybody as well. You love yourself because you're part and parcel of Krishna. So if you love Krishna, if you love gold, if you love a big lump of gold, then you love little particles of gold automatically. And it's not new agey to have love for yourself. Krishna was saying to Arjuna, you're better than this. Don't you understand? If you resist the fighting, you're a warrior anyway. Sooner or later, you're going to have to fight. So you're not going to be happy. You're going to be beating yourself up if you don't do it. People will speak of you in so many unkind words. So Krishna really was trying to help Arjuna navigate out of this. He was putting himself into a situation where he was going to really, really be unhappy about the way he'd conducted himself and the decisions that he'd made. He said, just fight. You'll be happy whether you win or you lose. You're doing your duty as a warrior. So just go ahead, don't hold back. Don't try and conjure up all these ramifications and justifications. This is, you know, you are capable. You are much better than this. Don't turn your back. You know, you're a warrior, you know. You're so powerful. You're mighty armed. You're the conqueror of sleep, Gudakesh, Dhananjaya. You're the winner of wealth. You're an amazing, you know, you're the son of Kunti. Come on, you know. Do this, you know, you can do it. And then Arjuna's like, okay, fair enough. Okay. I'll go for it, you know. So to do that, you have to really encourage yourself. You have to be really, really positive and think, no, it's possible. I can do it. You know, I mean, when I first came to Krishna consciousness, and I wasn't sure whether I really fitted in. I wasn't sure whether other devotees had been punk rockers and done punk rocky things, or maybe I was just too kind of punked out to do it. You know, to go from a punk to a monk. So I was thinking like that, and then a devotee came over and he said, "Are you going to stay? Are you going to join?" And I said, "Well, I don't really know if I can." He said, "Prabhu, you're so into things. You should stay. You're really enthusiastic, you know." And I said, "Well, do you think I could be a devotee?" And he said, "Of course I do." I said, "Really? You think I could actually be a devotee?" He said, "Yeah." I thought, well, fair enough then. If he thinks I can do it, I'll try, you know. But if I hadn't been encouraged like that, and I wouldn't have really. So we have to learn that. Actually, we have to learn that technique of how to show ourselves love, show ourselves validation, and be our friend. You know, you've got so many little things that are pushing against you, little voices that are saying you're useless and you're no good, you're none of this. These are all little weights. You're already trying to climb the stairs, which is already quite steep and difficult. And you've got all these little weights on your shoulders, just slowing you down. And you want to turn all those voices into things that are uplifting you. You can do this. You know, you've got so much potential. You're so capable. What you did then was really good. That's like not false. It's not false prestige. It's just taking a pride in doing things nicely for Krishna and recognizing that. And then these little voices, they help to lift us. And instead of climbing up the stairs, we start floating up the stairs. That's how we make the mind the friend. We don't want our mind to be an enemy. We want to make it our friend, you see. If you're beating the mind up and being horrible to it all the time, then it becomes our enemy. Jai, Iskon Guru Vinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Bol. Gaura Bhakta Vinda ki, Jai.